You smell that? What's that smell? Smells like the weekend. Parade wave. Parade wave.
Got my royalty wave there.
You got him down. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday, 4th day of May, 2018. It is a Wake Up Wenatchee Valley. I am Dan Koontz, your host. Steve Harrow, news director to my immediate left. Kat, pushing the buttons, in control, telling us what to do most of the time. And welcome to this Friday edition. Apple Blossom, the big weekend is here. It is upon us. We're going to be all over the place over the next couple of days. And we are not your official Apple Blossom television station, but we're pretty close to it. I can tell you that much. Classy Chassis, the Les Schwab Classy Chassis Parade will be live on this very television station at 6:30 tonight with our very own Grant Olson and Brent Crowder. They'll be handling the play-by-play duties, if there is such a thing, during the parade. And then tomorrow, the big one, the single biggest event of the Apple Blossom Festival is the Stimilk Growers Grand Parade.
Absolutely. It's really the signature event for the Wenatchee Valley.
And we will have it in high-definition television with like 4 or 5 cameras. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the drone up in the air, all that good stuff. So if you can't make it, and by the way, the weather's really good, and we're going to do a forecast for you just right around the corner. Weather's going to be very pleasant for the parade, but for whatever reason, if you can't make it on the long side of the parade route, we please invite you to join us at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning for live coverage of the Stimilk Growers Grand Parade. I'm pumped. I'm ready. I got apple blossom fever. I know you do.
Couldn't ask for better weather. Chamber of Commerce couldn't ordered up a better weekend. In fact, it started yesterday with the golf tournament. Beautiful weather. I think they all had a great time.
Now, that high-pressure ridge has been giving us this beautiful weather all week. It's starting to flatten out and it's starting to break down. That's why you see behind Steve, we have a few more clouds than we were anticipating. The key is no wind and no rain. If you can take those two things and get them out of here for Saturday, we'll be fine. And it turns out we'll be fine. Let's not waste any time. You ready to take our tour?
Let's take a look around the valley.
Courtesy of Localtel Sky-Fi high-speed wireless internet. That is the cross-camera pulled about as far back as we can pull it back. It's mild, by the way, because of the cloud cover, Steve. It's 61 outside of our studios right now.
Balmy.
So it's a balmy 61. Our high today, our forecast high, by the way, 77, which is what we hit yesterday, which is what we hit Wednesday. So we still haven't hit that magic 80-degree mark yet this year. Good morning, Wenatchee Valley. Get ready for a fun 3 days, and a busy one at that. Camera 2, Kat says we're going to take a trip back
to Waterville,
to Badger Mountain, turned up towards the Waterville Plateau. We did this camera a couple of days ago, and it surprised the heck out of me. It's cool. That's an incredible view.
For the raven wheat.
That's right.
Sure smells sweet.
When the wind comes right behind the rain.
Thank you very much,
Nicely done, Kat. A beautiful view there.
Yeah.
Look at the wheat just hanging in there and growing, everybody. Camera number 3. Oh, there's Steve Summerhome.
Hey,
there it is.
Nice. We did a little paint job.
Yeah, I noticed you've been working on it on weekends. That's Monument Hill, by the way, in the lower right-hand corner. That's where Steve and his lovely wife, Lynette, like to spend their summers. They go out there and just kind of get away from it all.
Yeah, and I want to thank Big Ed's, of course, for the paint.
Big Ed's Supply House supplied the paint there for Steve and Lynette's summer.
Now, I thought a tile roof would have been nice.
You want it authentic.
I want something that's fire resistant and fire safe.
But it's a natural look for you, because I know you like the woodsy kind of outdoors.
And it's air cooled.
Yeah, it's air cooled, absolutely. Good morning, Quincy. Opportunities are unlimited out there. And finally, camera 4. Kat says, I don't know because our monitor just went dead. Oh, there it is.
Oh, Turtle Rock.
That's Turtle Rock. That's my guess is that a Rondo Rock turned down the river, Kat? That is. That's a Rondo Rock. Most of the time,
I like that image better.
Yeah, I do. I like that as well. Most of the time, of course, this camera is pointed up the Columbia. This time it's pointed down the Columbia. So you can almost make out Rocky Ridge Dam to your right. You can certainly see Turtle Rock. That stands out like a turtle rock.
And we can see Mission Ridge.
You can see Mission Ridge. The snow is receding day by day up at Mission Ridge.
What a gorgeous day it is, really.
Yeah, it's a nice day. It's again, it's kind of going to be a mixture of clouds and sun today. Mostly cloudy is really going to be the forecast. But we're going to have some sun breaks tomorrow. It's 50-50. From the National Weather Service, let's do your forecast. As I mentioned before, the ridge is beginning to break down and flatten out. That means clouds will be thickening up. We're going to play it safe, Steve, and say mostly cloudy and 77 today. However, no wind and no rain. That's very pleasant outdoor weather. You're not going to have to break out the sunscreen or anything like that. Lots of clouds tonight, 52 for the overnight low. Here's your hour-by-hour forecast for Saturday. It's going to be 50% clouds and 50% sun, no rain, no wind. By the time the parade starts, Steve, at 11 o'clock, it'll be about 65 degrees and about 50% clouds and 50% sun. By the time the parade wraps up, 1:30-ish or so, it'll be about 70 degrees, but it'll also be a little cloudier. Again, the big key here on Saturday, no wind, no rain. That's a very comfortable temperature.
That is.
It's a very comfortable
Sunday
temperature.
may be a little change.
Sunday we have a little change coming in. It's going to be kind of a muggy day. Humidity is going to be up on Sunday. We even have a chance of a late afternoon thunderstorm. By late afternoon on Sunday, I mean 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, really. On Sunday, that's our best chance of a thunderstorm. And then another ridge of high pressure will begin to build up on Monday and Tuesday.
What's the chance of moisture for Sunday?
Sunday, our chance of precipitation is 30%.
Wow, okay.
30, and that's right at that demarcation line. If it's below 30%, we don't even bother with throwing the raindrop up on
Probably closer to those thunder cells, probably. Yeah.
Outside of that, not a bad looking forecast. I can certainly live with that. We got a lot of news to get to. We'll talk about the road closures as you're going to be dealing with both tonight in East Wenatchee and then tomorrow in beautiful downtown Wenatchee. Steve has a bunch of news to get to. Sports. Let's see if the Wenatchee Wild can punch their ticket to the biggest of them all, the RBC Cup. But they still got work to do against Spruce Grove. We got sports to talk about, the obscure holiday, birthdays today in history. Everyone is entitled to Mike McNighty's opinion. And in the second half of the show, on Wednesday at the All Service Club luncheon, our cameras were there for the entire hour-and-a-half festivities, and we were able to capture Dan Lewis, the retired Como 4 news anchor who retired a couple of years ago. He was the keynote speaker, and we're going to play his entire keynote speech from Wednesday's luncheon in the second half of the show. It's very entertaining. He's a funny guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very
quite a sense of humor.
If you didn't get a chance to see it, you'll want to check that out. That's the second half of the show. So it's 6 minutes after the hour, under cloudy skies at 61 degrees. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Steve Hare has your Friday morning news on this Apple Blossom edition of Wake Up Wenatchee Valley on the NCW Life channel.
This is the NCW Life Community Calendar brought to you by Localtel. Rugrat Nation 3-on-3 basketball tournament is May 5th from 2 to 6 at Pybus. The public is invited to watch this tournament specifically for kids grades K to 3. Pybus Art Lovers Sunday is May 6th from 10 to 4. Meet and visit local artists and watch them practice their craft. For more information and other community events, visit ncwlife.com.
Honda makes jets, robots, lawnmowers, motorcycles, boat motors. They're so well known and have a history of making quality machines and engines that's why we're willing to put on our automobiles a lifetime warranty. You know, some manufacturers, if they put this warranty on their vehicles, they'd lose money. Not with Honda. If you're betting against a Honda, you're a bad gambler. They're really well known for winning. My name is David Gonzalez, and I'm a product specialist at Apple Valley Honda.
And now it's time for your local news update with Steve Hare.
And here are some of the stories we're following in North Central Washington on this Friday. It's May 4th. It's back to the drawing board for the Wenatchee School District's Board of Directors following the defeat of the $120 million high school construction bond last month. Now, the board is set to discuss what happened and what the possible next steps might be starting next Tuesday at the regular board meeting. Superintendent Brian Flonis tells the Wenatchee World that there are no immediate plans or ideas of how to move forward. Meanwhile, Bond Campaign Committee member Matt Wisen shared his disappointment over that defeat on Monday's Wake Up Wenatchee Valley program with Dan Kuntz.
We spent a lot of time working on that, and it's hard not to see people go out and vote. I guess when I was younger, I kind of took voting for granted, but not anymore. You really need to get out, especially if you have lots of complaints. It seems like a lot of people complain about a ton of things, but they never go out and vote. So the bond, we thought we put together a really good package. It's expensive, and without really talking to a lot of people face to face, they did a lot of face to face, but apparently not enough. And I don't know why it failed, but 43% of the people that voted decided to say no, and so we've got to go back to the drawing board a little bit and find out what happened and what we can do to address the situation. It's got to happen. That building is going to go south in a hurry.
Big disappointment there at the school district with that bond measure falling 3 percentage points shy of the 60% supermajority required for passage. Also, the long-standing issue of parking in the tourist hotspot of Leavenworth was a spotlight at a special meeting Tuesday night at the Fest Hall. The city has partnered with the Chamber of Commerce and the Chelan County Port District to take a look at a comprehensive approach to parking in Leavenworth. Now, the three entities have hired Rick Williams Consulting from Portland, Oregon to work with community stakeholders to develop a downtown parking study. Meanwhile, City Administrator Joel Walensky said the parking problem goes beyond Oktoberfest and the Christmas Lighting Festival.
On your typical July, probably June, probably August weekend, Saturday afternoon, parking is pretty much used up in the downtown core. And so what's a better way to, number one, manage the parking that's there already, and then number two, are we to a point where we need to add additional capacity for cars? So the parking stakeholders group is scheduling another meeting with themselves to look at the different strategies, and what we've asked the consultants to do is come up with a plan for short-term, mid-term, and long-term strategies that the city and the community can use to address parking in the downtown core. So they'll be looking at that strategy package, and then at the end of June, first part of July, we'll hold another public open house and present that strategy plan to the community to get their input on it and get their feedback.
In the meantime, Walensky said the city has already added about 900 parking spaces in the last 2 years. Not enough. Obviously, Methow Valley State Airport's pavement is getting a makeover. Later this month, Washington State Department of Transportation Aviation Division begins a $5 million project to replace and rehabilitate that 22-year-old runway. In fact, it's the largest runway repaving project ever for the DOT. Airport will be closed to the public on May 14th to allow Wenatchee general contractor Selland Construction to start that project. Methow Valley State Airport in Winthrop is the largest of 16 state-managed airports serving commercial aircrafts that weigh up to 30,000 pounds. Now, the runway is tentatively scheduled to reopen at the end of June to avoid interfering with the expected fire season operations of the U.S. Forest Service conducted by the North Cascades Smoke Jumper Base at Winthrop. The NCSB is preparing to operate out of alternate airports as necessary until construction is completed. Well, Senator Patty Murray's reintroduced legislation in an attempt to improve disaster recovery programs that are intended to help communities impacted by wildfires. Now, the bill is known as the Rural Disaster Recovery Act of 2018, and it's the second time Murray has attempted to push it through the Senate. She outlined the key elements of the bill in a recent video.
My legislation, which was born of countless conversations in communities around Washington State, would not only incentivize wildfire prevention measures, it would also make sure the federal government is better positioned to help communities in their time of need. I believe it's the right thing to do to help rural communities that are increasingly at risk of devastating wildfires that have only grown in size and scope over the past decade. I want to touch on some of the highlights of my bill. The Rural Disaster Recovery Act of 2018 would expand the disaster safety net by creating a new program to help resource-strained communities recover from major disasters in the event individual assistance is not granted. The program could help with shelter, food, and other recovery services. It would modernize recovery programs by increasing the Farm Service Agency grant award limit, which has remained unchanged since 1981, and create a pilot program to provide disaster victims more time to apply for and utilize recovery grants. It would target mitigation assistance by helping wildfire-prone areas with easier, more reliable access to federal funds to defend against future fires. The bill makes permanent a pilot authority that allowed for FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program to be awarded to areas that were issued Fire Management Assistant grants but did not receive a major disaster declaration. The bill would also create a pilot program for the administration of HGMP, which would broaden the wildfire-specific eligible activities and expedite the application review and disbursement process. Finally, my bill recognizes the long-term effects of wildland fires by creating a pilot program to make FEMA public assistance funding available to areas that are affected by flooding or mudslides and landslides that were made worse by the wildfires. Wildfires and other disasters are devastating, but no community, county, or even state should have to shoulder the burden alone. Just like when tornadoes or hurricanes or earthquakes strike, I believe our country can and should step up to help neighbors in need. I'm proud to work with communities around our state on this legislation, and I'm proud to be your voice in the United States Senate. Thank you.
And following up on that story, the 2018 version of Murray's bill is in the same committee now. In fact, it died in the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee when Murray first introduced it back in 2016. Elsewhere, the season turns from spring to summer. The Wenatchee Valley YMCA once again encouraging kids and parents in Chelan and Douglas counties to explore the many benefits of swimming and water safety. As part of the National Water Safety Month, the YMCA is offering free community swim lessons to 500 area children and 25 teens and adults. Registration open now for the program. It takes place May 21st to May 25th at the Eastmont YMCA Aquatic Center. To learn more about the Wenatchee Valley YMCA's swimming programs, you can call 884-3113. Closing out this morning with another trip to the Apple Blossom Festival Food Fair. That's where Dan, my good buddy, has been reviewing some of the tasty delectables.
All right, the sun is out, it's lunchtime, I'm hungry, and today I'm in the mood for a good old-fashioned bratwurst. I'm here at Ziegler's, which has been here for 30 plus years, so I'm told. Anything, I'm sorry, your name?
Sandy Cameron.
Sandy is here. Sandy, anything that is the real big seller here?
The spicy bratwurst is our most popular.
Is that what I should do?
If you like jalapenos and cheese, you'll love it.
I'll do that.
All right.
Spicy bratwurst. Spicy bratwurst is my pick today. Should I have a little kraut with it? Because I love kraut.
You like onions?
Oh yeah, I like onions and sauerkraut.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
And then out there on that table in the squeeze bottle is our own blend of mustard, which we make ourselves.
Good, because
And
people who put ketchup on these things should be shot on sight.
My mother-in-law started this in 1972.
Okay.
My husband and I took over 27 years ago, and him and his brother just took over.
Thanks, Andy. I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
gobble this baby down.
All right, take care.
Let's get back to work. You got something on your arm, buddy. So Sandy said that the mustard that they make themselves is the way to go, and I'm going to take her word for it. There we go. Glob it all up there. All right, let's go sit down and eat this. This is the Civil War era cannon to pay tribute to all of the veterans of Washington State who fought in the Civil War. There were none, which is probably why it doesn't work. Today's Thursday as we tape this, and I washed my hands Thursday of last week, so I'm fine. Okay, to recap, before I bite into this, inside the actual brat here, we have jalapenos in the meat. She said it's their most popular. She says if you like it spicy, and I like it spicy. In addition to that, I have onions and sauerkraut, and topped off with their own mustard concoction, and I'm going in. Wish me luck. She wasn't kidding. That's got some personality to it. And the combination of the jalapenos, the actual meat, the onions, the sauerkraut, and the mustard, it is a gastrointestinal party. This is a 9.2 on our scale of 0, which is low-grade dog food, to 10, which is an Epicurean delight, 9.2. Worth every bite. Oh.
Well, Dan, at least your personal hygiene is a good order, so.
One more trip today will be Tucker Wagner, my good friend, my cameraman, and I will take one more trip to the food fair today, and we'll have something for you on Monday.
So it didn't measure up to Donner's. You said 9.2, you gave Donner's a 9.7. What's the deal?
I did. I said right
I think
there
you
when-
overloaded it too much with the mustard myself.
No, it was good. I ate the whole thing. But the Donner House sandwich is still my favorite. I mean, it is. And they're very, very busy. So I had another one yesterday.
We got a big parade tomorrow. That's going to affect traffic.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the road closures you'll be dealing with. Getting around town is always a challenge this time of the year anyway. That is the route and the road closures for the Les Schwab Classy Chassis Parade tonight. I want to point out one thing, that little stretch of yellow that you see on Georgia Georgia Avenue. That will close at noon
Okay.
today because that's where the cars go into the Eastmont Community Park. So Georgia, between 3rd and Grant Road, will close at noon today. The rest of the route that you see there will close at about 6 o'clock tonight, and it will reopen once the parade's over. About 8:30 or so is when they plan on reopening the route, and that is the parade route that you see is that big long stretch in red down Grant Road and then Valley Mall Parkway all the way to the highway. So all the connecting roads there that tie into Grant Road will all be closed again from 6 to about 8:30, and they close the road in the same order that the route is. So they start up at Grant Road in Georgia and then work their way down. So that's tonight. That's the Classy Chassis road closures and the parade route for tonight. Now tomorrow, for the Snow Growers Grand Parade, in red are the roads that will close, and they close these just like they will tonight, Steve, basically top to bottom. About 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, the crews from the Wenatchee Public Works Department will start closing Orondo, where it meets up at Triangle Park and Cherry Street, and then as they go down the parade route, they will close Orondo and all the side streets that attach to Orondo, and then of course down to Wenatchee Avenue. And you can see it, if it's in red, those roads will be closed starting at 7 o'clock, and it takes them about an hour and a half to go through the entire route and close everything. The green is the recommended alternate route if you need to avoid it altogether, because you will find quite a bit of traffic congestion. So that's the Grand Parade. Now we have the Tour de Bloom, which is the downtown bike race tomorrow. And again, starting at about 9 a.m., that little downtown red core area, you see all of those roads will be closed. And the green is your alternate route if you want to be in and around downtown during the Tour de Bloom. That'll be a lot of fun. And finally, parking. Where can you park? There. Liberty will charge you. That's their right. It's their property, and they can do that. The free parking, the best bet is behind the convention center. Pybus has whatever parking is available there. You can park at the Wenatchee Library, but that's always very, very tight because that's very close to the center of action. And a quick reminder, all the East Wenatchee Link bus routes tomorrow, Steve, are free.
Oh boy.
It is absolutely free. So your best bet, if you don't have to worry about parking, hop on a Link bus. It's not going to cost you a dime. Go to Link's website, and they have a special page specifically for Apple Blossom Festival goers to let you know where you can park. You can park in various large parking lots, and Link will be there, and they'll just shuttle you right down.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
So, and it's not just the shuttles that take you around the various items and things that are going on for the Apple Blossom Festival. All the routes that are in the East Wenatchee area, regardless if they take you to the food fair or not, are free tomorrow. The out-of-town routes, they'll still charge you, but the downtown routes and the East Wenatchee, totally
By the
free.
way, we'll also be posting this on our website, folks, so go to ncwlife.com for more information on, well, make us your go-to site, I guess, for everything Apple Blossom Festival related.
And if something actually develops, that there's an accident or a stoplight isn't working, the app is the way to go. If you have the Washington State Apple Blossom Festival app on your phone or your smartphone, you can go to the maps and it'll tell you right now, hey, we got a problem here, so your best bet is to do this or that or the other thing.
I love this new technology.
Yeah, isn't this cool?
It's cool.
This whole internet thing is catching on, I'm telling you. 23 minutes after the hour, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Sparks, you're watching a Friday edition of Wake Up Wenatchee Valley from Studio 2 in downtown Wenatchee on the NCW Life channel. Your home for the 2018 Washington State Apple Blossom Festival is the NCW Life channel. Be sure to watch the Kais Fiber Youth Parade Saturday, April 28th, the Les Schwab Classy Chassis Parade on Friday, May 4th, and the Milk Growers Grand Parade Saturday, May 5th, right here. Brought to you by Merry Maids. Relax, it's done. And by Schmidt Electric, serving the West since 1960. Your home for the 2018 Apple Blossom Festival is the NCW Life channel.
The Arbiter of Stoke is a series that highlights a variety of outdoor adventure sports that are available in the Pacific Northwest. I dedicate my time to enjoying this natural playground. The decision is yours. How will you keep your stoke?
Sports at 24 minutes after the hour. Well, we're going to go at it again tonight up there in beautiful Spruce Grove. See if the Wenatchee Wild can clinch the Doyle Cup and move on to the RBC Cup. That stands for the Royal Bank of Canada Cup. That begins next Saturday in Chilliwack, British Columbia, but they got work to do. They got another game tonight. If necessary, by the way, if they don't win tonight, games 6 and 7 will be also at the Grant Fur Arena tomorrow and Sunday at 6 o'clock. If you want to watch the games that have been played so far, you'll have a chance to do so. You can tune into game 2 of the Cup Saturday night, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and game 3 will be Sunday night at 8 o'clock right here on the NCW Life channel. Let's Schwab Prep scoreboard from yesterday. Tennis. Wenatchee swept Davis. Eastmont got swept. Pretty simple. And Kashmir swept Cle-Elum. In boys and girls tennis, the Wenatchee Valley Thunder played a hard-fought game against Richland last night. They lost 8-4. We're pretty sure that Wenatchee won the league. It's kind of a strange, the way they do the standings in boys lacrosse is a tad confusing. We can tell you that the Wenatchee Valley Thunder will play a playoff game next Saturday at Lee Bofto Field at the Apple Bowl. Prep schedule for today, starting in baseball. Wenatchee and Eastmont doubleheader at Historic Recreation Park. First game at 4 o'clock. Lot on the line here. Big game, Caribou Trail League. They wrap up their regular season today and tomorrow with the games that you see on your screen there. Also, girls softball games today. Wenatchee and Eastmont a doubleheader at the Sterling Sports Complex. Again, lot on the line. Go out and watch the local high school softball and baseball teams ply their trade. By the way, the postseason of boys soccer begins today. Wenatchee will host West Valley in a play-in game, a Big 9 district play-in game, tonight at Lee Bofto Field at the Apple Bowl. They kick off at 7 o'clock. The winner advances to play the winner of tonight's other play-in game between Eisenhower and Sunnyside. Davis and Eastmont have already punched their ticket to the districts. Let's move on to track and tennis. They won down their season this weekend. Chelan is at Royal. Lots of things going on in tennis today. Chelan's at Kashmir. Cascade travels to Omak. And Andy at hosts Oroville. Lots of things on the sports calendar. We mentioned the Tour de Bloom. It's a 3-day event. Today they'll do racing up in Plain. Tomorrow they do a road climb from Squilchuck State Park all the way to Mission Ridge. And then tomorrow night downtown in circles they go through the streets of downtown. It's a lot of fun. And then another road race on Sunday up on the Waterville Plateau. Don't forget the annual Apple Blossom Run begins the Stem Milk Growers Grand Parade. That is tomorrow as they run along the parade route. The local men's softball league hosts their annual spring opening tournament at Walla Walla Point Park. Over the weekend, the Apple Blossom 3-on-3 basketball tournament happens on the campus of Wenatchee Valley College. The Rugrite Nation basketball tournament Saturday at the Pybus Market. And the Mariners used a pretty good recipe. Not bad. Good pitching and timely hitting will get the job done. Wade LeBlanc and 4 other pitchers combined on a 6-hit, 1-run win. Seattle, they took 2 of 3 from the Oakland A's in the series. Nicely done. A couple of notes about the Seattle Mariners. Prior to last night's game, they announced that Ichiro would be transitioning to a front office position within the franchise, will not play again this season. In fact, his career is almost certainly done as a player. He's going to be in the clubhouse. He's going to take batting practice. He's going to take fielding practice. Ichiro is. He's just not going to play in the games. And finally, congratulations to Dalton Harum, a really good baseball player and Wenatchee High School alum. He's going to play Division I baseball next year for Virginia Tech. The guy can hit. Take my word for it. 28 minutes after the hour, it's time for the obscure holiday. It is May the 4th, and May the 4th be with you. It is Star Wars Day today, and in honor of Star Wars Day, I have, of course, the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek, because I couldn't find my Millennium Falcon anyway. Celebrate Star Wars Day today by watching one of the 97 Star Wars movies available for your perusement. 28 minutes after the hour, today in history. May 4th, 1904, the United States said, France, we got it from here. The United States began construction of the Panama Canal. Of course, France began the whole construction project back in 1881, but they gave up for 2 reasons. Number 1, they didn't know what they were doing, and number 2, their workers kept dying, and that's a bad combination. So the United States took over the construction of the Panama Canal in this state 114 years ago, and 10 years later, the most amazing engineering feat ever happened. That is a prison riot. If you had to rate prison riots on a scale of 1 to 10, this one was the 11. 72 years ago today, the Battle of Alcatraz. It didn't come to an end until they sent the Marines in. They had to send the Marines in to break the whole thing up. When it was all said and done, after a couple of days, 5 people were killed in the riot, a couple prisoners and 3 guards. The Battle of Alcatraz took place 72 years ago today, and 48 years ago today. Remember the names. Jeffrey Glenn Miller, he was 20. Allison Krauss, she was 19. William Knox Schroeder was 19. Sandra Lee Shower was 20. They were shot and they were killed by the Ohio National Guard at Kent State University on this date 48 years ago today. And finally, a couple of birthdays to get along. I don't necessarily agree with George Will's political stand all the time. I think he's very smart. His baseball books are great. George Will, called at one time the most powerful journalist in America, is 77 years old today. George Will made a lot of news a couple of years ago during the Donald Trump campaign when he said, "I'm leaving the Republican Party." and he did. George Will is 77 years old today. One of my favorite golfers, Rory McIlroy. His life is pretty good. There is Rory, #1 in the official world golf rankings for 95 weeks. Winner of the U.S. Open, the Open Championship, and 2 PGAs. He's only missing the Masters for the career Grand Slam. Rory McIlroy is 29 years old today. 30 minutes after the hour, going to take a quick break. When we come back, everyone is entitled to Mike Mignotti's opinion, and then Dan Lewis's keynote address from Wednesday's All-Service Club Luncheon, still to be had between now and 8 o'clock on Wake Up Wenatchee Valley on the NCW Life Channel.
Tacos Chava has something new. Customers at Tacos Chava say it's the best Mexican food around. Nachos, enchiladas, tortas, ensaladas. And introducing camarones in many styles. You'll love the fresh salsa bar with so much selection. Are you ready for Tacos Chava? Find them at 2 great locations, the Wenatchee Valley Mall and Eniat. Tacos Chava, tan delicioso.
For plumbing, heating, or cooling repair, Patriot will be right there.
Don't wait till your equipment breaks. This Lennox dealer can help.
Keep your home comfort system running smoothly with regular checkups from Patriot Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. Call Patriot today.
Patriot Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling will give your home a hug.
Get up to $1,700 in rebates or special financing.
I have a doctor who knows what they're talking about.
It's just so much more hands-on and friendly than anywhere else I've ever been.
It's really great to walk into somewhere where you feel welcomed and you feel accepted.
We've just been grateful for the care and respect that we've been given there.
And here when I come to visit my doctor, I'm not afraid to ask questions.
It's not just about getting you in and out.
I love my care at CVCH. It's awesome. Give it a try.
Hey, this is Mike, Mad Dog Magnotti, and everybody is entitled to my opinion. Okay, I need to know. Does my wife Rosie have some kind of superpower? It's like everywhere I am about to go, she either gets there first or gets in my way. Now, the other day, I was about to get a roll of paper towels, and as soon as I turned in that direction, she got between me and the paper towels as she was putting something in the garbage. Another time, I just turned to go to our kitchen computer, and as I was heading there, she got in front of me, already sitting down at the desk. And it's not just in our home where this happens, it's everywhere. And not only that, just as I'm about to do something like open a window, she says to me, "Open the window." Shit, this happens all the time. I need to know, does every wife do this? I'm really thinking I need to report this to someone. This is Mike Mad Dog Magnotti, and that's my opinion.
It's been 4 years now since I retired. I feel very lucky because I loved my job up until the very last day that I worked. I enjoyed the people I worked with. I enjoyed the challenges, the deadlines, being on top of the news, being such an important part of the community in Seattle, the camaraderie in the newsroom. We had a great team. As much as I loved my job, I have to say, since the day I left, I have not missed my job. Sure, I miss the people, and I miss a lot that went along with it. But when I was working, I woke up to news radio. I watched all the newscasts of the networks, the competition's noon news. I read a lot of newspapers. I mean, I was just inundated with news all day long. If there was a news conference, I would watch it because I felt like I needed to know what was going on. And I did it really 24/7, except when I was sleeping, and I usually dreamt about the news. So I think, and after retiring, it was one of those things that I didn't even imagine, didn't think about. I knew I wasn't going to have to go to work every day anymore, which is a great blessing. But I found that there was room in my brain for something else other than just news, and it's been a real joy. I've stayed very active over the last 4 years, done a lot of hiking, snowshoeing. Feel good that I'm able to work out at the gym 4 or 5 days a week. I've taken several road trips around the country, done a little bit of international traveling. The greatest blessing is the time that I have to spend with my family. All 3 of my kids are in the Seattle area. I call them kids. They are well into adulthood now. But retired life is good, very good. I feel blessed. Of course, I was trying to think of a story that maybe I could tell about apples. And it did get to be rather known once social media came out. One of the little things that I would post on social media occasionally was that every day at work, I would have at 3 o'clock, precisely 3 o'clock, I'm not a creature of habit, really, I would have an apple. It was usually a Granny Smith, very often Red Delicious or Fuji or Honeycrisp, an occasional Opal if I could find one. And it's a habit that I have continued since I retired. Not so much anymore at 3 o'clock every day, but an apple a day. So of the 10 to 12 billion apples harvested in Washington State, I am doing my small part. And now also apple-related, believe it or not, the 1995 movie Assassins, which was filmed in Seattle. Starred Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas, Julianne Moore, and in a very small way, Kathy Gertson and Dan Lewis. It was directed by Richard Donner, and he has a place in the San Juan, so he was familiar with Kathy and me. And he contacted the station and said, we've got a little segment in the movie where we need a newscast. And our management team said, great, yeah, we'll do it. Kathy and Dan will do it. So in the movie, action movie, things are blowing up, and I don't know what shenanigans Stallone was involved in. But he goes back to his hotel room to see if the local media is aware of what's going on. And he turns on the TV, and there is Kathy, full screen, 5 or 6 seconds, and she's reading a story about Washington apples. And so Stallone goes, they cut back to Stallone, and he's satisfied that we don't know what's going on. And then just as he's about to hit the remote control to turn off the TV, you hear me say about a word and a half. You don't see me, you hear me say about a word and a half. So that was my starring role in that movie. Believe it or not, I still get, this is why movies cost so much, they send me residuals for my word and a half. But don't feel like the residuals are a great thing. I got a check recently for 27 cents. So how did I end up in the news business? I grew up in the Chicago area. Had a fascination as a child with disc jockeys, the creative ones, not the ones that just kind of spun the records, but the ones that I could tell were having fun and being creative. To me, that was an art I thought would be very exciting to be involved in. I love sports, and my real dream was to do sports play-by-play. For whatever reason, I wasn't a cartoon-watching kid. I would rather turn on the news, even as a preteen. But I love sports and dreamed of playing baseball someday if I could. I had a great experience as a 13-year-old. I entered a contest in the Chicago Daily News. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And it was to be the White Sox bat boy. I lived on the south side, and I finished second in the contest, so I was given the job as visiting team bat boy at Comiskey Park. Of course, I was a little disappointed that I wouldn't be working with the White Sox. But it was pretty cool for me as a 13-year-old in the dugout with players like Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra, Carl Yastrzemski, Ernie Banks, who was with the Cubs at the time, and they only played one game against the White Sox back then. Brooks Robinson, Harmon Killebrew, the list goes on and on. It was a real treat for me. And one of the nicest guys that I met, one of the players, was Jimmy Pearsall. I'm sure that many people in this room do remember Jimmy. He was quite a character. He was with the Washington Senators at the time. He was known for really odd antics on the baseball field. One time he hit a home run and he ran the bases backwards. Not third to second to first, but he was running backwards, like doing the moonwalk or something. A lot of what he did seemed funny at times, but it turned out that he had some real issues. He was bipolar, and they did a movie about that. It was called Fear Strikes Out. Well, the reason I bring this up, I remember Jimmy Pearsall as being the nicest guy. He would sit there and talk to me about Little League, about sports, about school, about anything. So I always looked forward to when they were in town, because Jimmy Pearsall, even though some people thought he had some real problems, was a wonderful man. One of the people who was not so friendly that I met when I was the bat boy was a guy named Pedro Ramos, and he pitched for the Cleveland Indians. And you know, they had everything free for the players in the locker room, from food to drinks to gum, candy. So I always had this big wad of double bubble chewing gum in my mouth. And I see Pedro Ramos one day. I was sitting before the game at my locker, and he's coming around the corner, and there are like 2 or 3 other players behind him with these real kind of weird looks on their face, like something's up. I knew something was up. He goes, "Hey kid, are you a man or a mouse?" And I said, "Well, I like to think I'm a man." He goes, "Well, then spit out that gum and have some of this." And he pulled out the beech nut chewing tobacco. Well, I'm 13 years old. I take it and I put it in my mouth, and I'm chewing and swallowing and chewing and swallowing. I got out there for the first inning of the baseball game, and you kneel down by the on-deck circle, and I was like wobbling like this. And one of the players said, "Are you all right, kid?" I said, I don't know. He said, "What's up?" I said, "Well, I had this chewing tobacco." And I'm sure Pedro Ramos is laughing like crazy, but for the next hour and a half, I was back in the locker room getting treated by the team trainer. People often ask about funny mistakes that I've made on the air over the years, as much as I hate to talk about them. But there was one time, and it was during wildfire season, which of course is not a funny situation at all, but there was a certain fire, and I was talking about how many people were battling the fire. And I didn't say this number of firefighters, I said fire farters. Slightly embarrassing. And then when I got back to the newsroom after the newscast, I pulled the desk, my chair out from behind my desk, and on my seat of my chair was somebody had put a pack of matches. So from high school, I moved on to Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, Illinois. I often equate it to Washington State University because it's in the total opposite end of the state from the metropolitan and the big university. And it had a great communications department, as WSU does. And I got a great education there and moved on after I majored in radio and television and had a journalism minor. My first job was a news reporter and then news director at a small radio station in a Chicago suburb. I worked 6 days a week, starting at 5 a.m., working all morning, afternoon, many times into the evening, covering city council meetings and school board meetings and things like that. Before it was all over, I did get a chance to do some play-by-play there of high school and college baseball, football, basketball, but it was mostly news. I started out there in 1973 making $7,800 a year, and when I left 3 years later, my salary had skyrocketed to $8,500 a year. It was 6 days a week, 8 to 16 hours a day, and I loved every minute of it, and I learned so much, and I did get the chance to do some of that play-by-play. From there, I got my first television job, and that was in Shreveport, Louisiana. I knew where New Orleans was. I had to look on the map to see exactly where Shreveport was, but it put me on the path that I'm so happy that it did. It was a television news job, and from there, after a short time in Shreveport, I went to Louisville, Kentucky. One of the highlights in Louisville is the first Saturday in May that we're coming up on here, was the Kentucky Derby. I had a great opportunity to do a lot of stories, again, being the sports lover that I am, with the jockeys and the trainers and talking about the horses. And much like your festival, they have the Kentucky Derby Festival, which runs for a couple of weeks in advance. So it was a fun time. And my assignment on Derby Day, because we carried all the races until the network took over and did the Kentucky Derby itself. So we were on like 10, 12 hours. I had the opportunity to interview all the celebrities in attendance, people like Howard Cosell, Walter Cronkite, Muhammad Ali, Jacqueline Smith, who was one of Charlie's Angels at the time, other actors, actresses, and athletes, and it was a fun time. After 3 years in Louisville, I was on the move again, this time to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I had a really fun experience as part of my job in Milwaukee as well. It wasn't just all hard news. In 1982, The Milwaukee Brewers went to the World Series, and with my dreams of doing play-by-play and being a sports guy, I did get to cover the playoffs in the World Series that year. It's amazing how uplifting that is for a community, the excitement, everybody's pulling together. I sure am hoping for that in Seattle someday. And who knows, this might be the year. Things are going good so far. They can avoid the injuries and they have such a great attitude. I love watching the M's play because they do have a lot of spirit. You can tell they're pulling together for what could be a very fun and exciting season. But I did travel with the team in 1982 back and forth to St. Louis. Unfortunately, the Brewers did lose in 7 games, but it was a great experience for me. Then after 6 years in Milwaukee, I moved again. It's the nature in our business to kind of start in a smaller market and move your way up. And my next stop was in Washington, D.C. Of course, covering the news in the nation's capital was a pretty big deal. There's never a dull moment. Not quite like today, but still not dull. Then a really good thing happened to me in 1987. After being in Washington, D.C. for a couple of years, my agent, I had an agent back then, woo, big time. But he called me and said, hey, there's this great opportunity in Seattle. Would you be interested? Came out and did the interview, met a lot of great people in the Como newsroom, and I did decide to make what turned out to be probably the best move of my life. I joined the team of Jim Harriet, Kerry Brock, Steve Poole, Bruce King, and Kathy Gertzen. Jim and Kerry left Como after a short period of time, moved on to other jobs, but according to many sources, including Wikipedia, if we can believe everything we read on Wikipedia, that our team of Kathy, Steve, and I became the 3rd longest running anchor team to stay together in the country. So we had many years together, and they were really good times. I have another baseball story, so I'm sure you're beginning to understand my love of baseball, but in 1992, another thing happened where I ran into the news director's office and said, hey, Nintendo is going to buy the Mariners to prevent them from moving to another city. If I can get an interview with the head of Nintendo in Japan, can we go? He said, absolutely. So I worked the phone, got on making all these phone calls, and finally did arrange to have an interview with Hiroshi Yamauchi if I flew to Japan. So the very next day, we decided to make it happen. I'm getting on a plane, and we made one big mistake. We announced on the air that I was going to Japan to get an exclusive interview with the new owner of the Seattle Mariners. Well, our competitors weren't too happy that we were getting an exclusive interview, so they called Nintendo locally in Redmond. So I arrive after traveling 4,779 miles from Seattle to Tokyo to check into my hotel, and I'm handed an envelope, and it was from the gentleman who I arranged the interview with to notify me that the interview had been canceled. They offered to pay for our flights, but that was something we declined. We ended up doing some other stories about baseball in Japan and trade between Washington State and Japan. So we got some stories, but clearly not the one that we had gone there for. Also in 1992, Kathy and I hosted one of presidential candidate Bill Clinton's town meetings. He did this in just a few cities across the country where he would meet with citizens and ask whatever questions they had. And it was during that town meeting that I realized what a impressive politician Bill Clinton was. Now, I'm not talking about any stance that he had at any issue, but I had never, and I had spent a lot of time around politicians, I had never seen a person who was so good at talking to people and making them believe that he really did care, or that he appeared to really care about what their issues were. And then after his inauguration in 1993, I was invited to the White House to interview him again. I ended up being the first reporter in the country to interview President Clinton in the White House. I had also interviewed, as previously mentioned, Jimmy Carter in the White House and George H.W. Bush a few times, and I have to say in my dealings with him, he was he was a kick. He was a real gentleman, great sense of humor, a very nice man. I was going to interview President Obama in the White House in 2014. I was at SeaTac Airport. I was literally they were starting to call people to board the plane when my producer made one last check of his cell phone, and I could tell by the look on his face something really bad had just happened. And it was the crash of the Como helicopter. It was March 18th, 2014. Turned out to be obviously a very, very sad day. I rushed back to the station and we were on the air much of the day and into the evening. The helicopter was taking off from Como, crashed on Broad Street right outside the station, right by the Space Needle. The pilot, Gary Fitzner, and our Como photographer, Bill Strothman, were killed. The debris hit a car, and an innocent driver going by was badly burned, but he did survive. I didn't know the pilot, Gary, that well because he worked mornings and I worked evenings, but I do know that he loved to fly. He was an excellent pilot, and he was very proud to be a part of the Como team. Bill, the photographer, I had worked with on many projects. His son is also a photographer at Como, still is, Dan Strothman. But Bill was a real pro, a very good man and a friend. It was a horrible loss. The investigation took a couple of years, and they finally did determine that the cause of the crash was mechanical failure. And that brings me to the last thing I would like to talk about today, and that's my dear friend Kathy Gertzen. Her 60th birthday was just 2 days ago, on Monday. It made me realize, that so many people kind of dread those milestones in life, 60 years old, and that we really should cherish those milestones in life. I said earlier that probably the best move I made was to go to Seattle, and one of the big reasons I say that is because it brought Kathy Gertzen into my life. We got to be great friends. Obviously, she was a joy to work with. We got to know each other so well that I think during breaking news, when you're dealing with just breaking developments, none of it's scripted. I kind of felt like she knew what I was going to say, and I knew what she was going to say, and we certainly knew when each other wanted to talk. I mean, it got to the point where we had this great chemistry. We had a great respect for each other. She was obviously a solid journalist, a hard worker. She loved Seattle, where she was born and raised. I worked with a lot of co-anchors, male and female, over the years, and most of them, or a lot of them, would get into that anchor voice where they were so serious and, making their presentation. But Kathy was always so genuine on the air. She was just a natural. The people that saw Kathy at home, that was the real Kathy Gertzen. Very smart, a real caring person. She and I shed many a tear together covering the news when there were tragic stories, especially if children were involved. Kathy spent a lot of time at Children's Hospital. She helped raise a lot of money for Children's and the families and patients there. I remember one time I was with Kathy at Children's. We had been working on a project together, and as we left to go to the TV station, Kathy stopped at every open door to go into the room to see how the families were doing, how the children were. Very often it was kids she had never met before. Sometimes it was kids she had worked with on the telethon, the Children's Network telethon. But she was just that kind of person where she had to stop to see, to console families, to give them whatever support she could. This past Friday, we had a nice little event in Seattle. A small group, I think it was 120 people, to honor Kathy's 60th birthday. And the Friends of Kathy Gertzen Guild at Children's put it on. And interestingly enough, we managed to raise for brain tumor research and research on childhood cancer $60,000, which was appropriate. Thank you. Thank you. Because for her 60th birthday, the auctioneer was great because he realized we were at like 58,121, and then he just made sure that we got enough donations to get up to 60,000. We, of course, eventually saw how courageous Kathy Gertzen was when she was dealing with her own medical issues. And during her 12-year battle with brain tumors, she was in and out of the hospital, in and out of surgery, on and off the anchor desk. She would get knocked down and then she would come back. Even as the tumors began to damage her nerves and deform her face, she wanted to be at Como. She wanted to be on the air. She wanted to be reporting the news, living the life and doing the job that was so important to her. each time she had a setback and the tumors would come back, she was always hesitant to tell us, her friends and her family and the anchor team. It was like she was more concerned about how it would affect us than it was affecting her. But then she would always rebound. She would come back. She would make it very clear that these tumors were not going to define her life, and she would move on as best she could, always wanting to be on the air. And then when it became clear that she couldn't anchor anymore because the tumors had done damage to her vocal cords, she could hardly talk, she would still come to Como almost on a daily basis and do whatever she could, even though it wasn't on the air. And then after battling that knockdown, drag-out, 12-round heavyweight fight, the tumors finally won. And Kathy passed away. It was noon on August 13th, 2012. I had fortunately spent the morning at the hospital, so I had some time with her and her family. And then when I got back to the station, we had been notified that Kathy passed. Eric Johnson, Mary Nam, Steve Poole, and I went on the air right away, and we stayed on the rest of the day and into the night. And so many people have asked me, especially back then, but even now when I talk to some people about Kathy, how in the world were we able to go on the air and do that? Well, my response has always been, sure, it was one of the most difficult days of my life for many reasons, but that's what we would want to be doing anyhow. We would be sitting around talking about Kathy, telling stories about Kathy, talking about the stories that she had covered at Como, talking about how much we loved her and she loved us. The community back then had shown so much support for her, and we loved talking about that and Kathy's love for the community. It was obviously a very difficult time. I think about Kathy every single day, and I definitely feel her spirit. I often get asked about Kathy's two daughters, Alexa and Andrea. Alexa is now an accomplished opera singer performing in New York City and Seattle. And Andrea recently graduated from college and now is in the early stages of a 2-year stint with the Peace Corps in Guinea, West Africa. No doubt Mom would be very proud of both Andrea and Alexa, two very impressive young women. Kathy would also, right now, up in heaven, be rolling her eyes because I always get so emotional when I talk about her, and she would be saying, "Oh my God, there he goes again." Having been retired for 4 years, I really am so happy that you had a desire to hear from me, to fill this great room. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I have come to love this state, its beauty, its people, and it's an honor for me to be a part of this great tradition, the Apple Blossom Festival. Thank you very much.
Wow, good stuff from Dan Lewis. Powerful, powerful speech. Indeed, that's good stuff. Just about time to wrap up this Friday edition of Wake Up Wenatchee Valley and our week's worth of Apple Blossom programs. We hope you'd enjoyed it. The big thing this weekend, what's Mother Nature have in store for us? Well, this is what Mother Nature has in store for us. That ridge-of-high pressure that's been giving us that beautiful stretch of weather pretty much all week long, it's beginning to flatten out and it's beginning to break down, and that means the clouds will be thickening up. Now, we're not expecting any real rain. We're not expecting any rain at all today, and very little wind. Just mostly cloudy skies. A very pleasant and mild 77 degrees. Cloudy skies tonight. 52 for the overnight low. The all-important parade forecast looks pretty darn good. Partly sunny skies, about 50% clouds, 50% sun off and on throughout the course of the day. It'll be about 64, 65 degrees in the Wenatchee Valley at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning when the Still Milk Growers Grand Parade kicks off. It'll be about 71 or 72 by the time it ends. We're not expecting any rain tomorrow. We're not expecting any wind tomorrow. Just clouds and sun doing battle throughout the course of the day on Saturday and a high of 76. Sunday, we do have a slight chance of some very late afternoon thunderstorms as a weak little system rolls in on Sunday. As you can see, mild It's going to be kind of a muggy 81 on Sunday, and then as we all head back to work and clean up our little town and go back to normal, sunshine Monday and a high of 83, and sunshine and a high of 84 on Tuesday. We have no complaints at all about the weather forecast. Everybody have yourself a great Apple Blossom weekend. Have fun, be safe. Don't forget Les Schwab Classy Chassis Parade live here tonight at 6:30. The Milk Growers Grand Parade live here tomorrow at 11. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday. Bye-bye.